pronouns they, them, is the executive director of League of Women Voters in Maine and Maine Citizens for Clean Elections. Anna grew up in Maine and has spent the last 6 years working on getting big money out of politics, defending voting rights, expanding civic engagement, and educating Mainers about ranked choice voting. In 2016, they ran for the state legislature as a clean elections candidate. They live in Portland with their partner Megan and pet rabbit Pine Nut, and in their spare time enjoys figure skating. Welcome, Anna. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here too. And Fiona Aquilo Star Wars, sorry. She, hers is a senior at South Portland High School, and Fiona is passionate about social justice and is interested in the intersections between racial inequality and capitalism. She wants to pursue a career in the field of law and has been involved with many organizations and initiatives such as Seeds of Peace, the ACLU of Maine, and the Telling Room, Young Writers and Leaders Program. Welcome, Fiona. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think you just about covered it.
Lutie Brown, she, hers, is a junior double majoring at Colby College. She serves on the Waterville City Charter Commission, is the Deputy Director of Inclusivity, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility at College Democrats of America, Action Chair of Colby Planned Parenthood Generation Action, and the student leader of the nonpartisan Colby Votes Initiative. She also serves as a fellow for Maine Students Vote and works as an intern for Congresswoman Shelley Pingree. Welcome, Lutie. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
They just about covered it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Marina Mozak is the digital director of Next Gen Maine, a lifelong Mainer and community organizer. Marina began her activism as a student at the Maine School of Science and Math. She continued working on issues around civil rights and environmental justice through college until returning to Maine to turn out young voters with Next Gen. Welcome, Marina. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, thanks so much for hosting this.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for being on the panel. And Vivian Burnham, she, hers, is a 17-year-old senior at Marshwood High School in York County, Maine. Outside of youth voter activism, some of her hobbies include political and environmental activism in general. She also spends her time as a dedicated member of her school's NHS civil rights team and Triumph. Welcome, Vivian. Is there anything else you want to add?
Well, yes, I'm also a member of the Youth Council Steering Committee and the Steering Committee of Youth Work to Booth Work, which has enabled me to become a poll worker in the upcoming election, which I'm really excited about. I've also been interviewed today on the Name Calling radio station, which was really awesome. And I've done a few I did a TV interview and a few others as well. So
yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And so we've heard a bit about what causes all of our panelists are working on, and I'm curious to how all of our panelists got started. So once you found out about the issues that you're passionate about, did you jump right into action, or did something change first that got you motivated? Like, did you have to talk yourself into it? And so why don't we start with Anna, and then afterwards we'll go to Fiona.
Great. So I've always been interested in politics and activism. I was protesting against the Iraq War in my middle school as a one-person protest. I made a t-shirt and wore it to school, and I've learned since then how to be more effective and how to get other people involved. But I went from being really interested in international relations and conflict resolution to being interested in how democracies grow out of conflicts, to then looking at our democracy back home and seeing, you know, rather than being this perfect model that we could export into other places, that it has a lot of flaws in it, and a lot that we can be doing better here. So I came back to Maine 6 years ago and have been working on democracy reform locally ever since. And I like to keep still like one eye on what's going on in other parts of the world, because there's a lot that we can learn from the struggles and the successes that people are having around the world.
So I think that Sarah wanted me to go next, so I can just get into it. So I got started with activism, like kind of like what Anna said. It's kind of been, politics are always been a part of my life, somewhat intrinsic to have an interest and speak out about it. But for a long time, I put my energy toward athletics and like just kind of generally going to clubs. But my teacher, Miss Everly, well, actually, she's not my teacher, but she worked at my school. She recently retired, and she also used to be on the legislature. But she was the community liaison, so she connected students with opportunities outside of school. So I went to her, kind of trying to explore career opportunities. So at first I thought, okay, I'm gonna be a doctor. Oh, is my audio more clear if I hold it like this? Okay, sorry about that. So I started looking into careers in the medical field, and I realized that is really not for me. And I went to a mock trial. It was like the National Mock Trial Conference in Portland. So I was a volunteer there, and that kind of really got me interested in law, and then later activism. Through Seeds of Peace, I really developed my passion towards social justice, and I cemented some connections within the social justice community in Portland. And it just kind of grew from there. And I think, yeah, that intrinsic part of myself has just driven me to be involved in this community for the past 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
Thank you two so much for your answers. And next, I want to hear from Lutie, and then Marina, and then Vivian after Marina.
Yeah, so politics and the news have always been a really big part of my life, and growing up, of course, is what we talked about at the dinner table. And I actually had a pretty funny start in politics. I ran for class office, I think as early as I could when I was in 3rd grade, and I had 2 votes for 3rd grade class representative, and then I kept running from then on out. Came close in 7th, I got 5th grade representative, 7th grade like vice president or something. I was 5 votes away from 8th grade president. I thought that was the end of my political career. It was pretty funny. And then I got to high school and said, oh, maybe politics isn't for me. But then, of course, I kept working in smaller circles and like the Feminist Alliance and whatnot. And then once Trump was elected when I was 16 years old, I played a big part in making sure that the school community could heal and feel safe, including like the day after the election. So that was huge for me. And then I hopped right on AOC's campaign in 2018 because I'm originally from New York City. And that was really my big start in like grassroots organizing. And prior to that, I'd gotten really focused in mass incarceration and decriminalization of the police through like a lot of research into the work of Equal Justice Initiative and Southern Poverty Law Center and a lot of other small activist organizations throughout the Deep South. So that was my interest. And then in conversations with AOC, I was like, oh, this is a really great politician who should probably be elevated and we should get her into office. So that was my first big, exciting campaign. And of course that paid off. And then right from then I went straight into working for Zephyr Teachout, who was running for New York State Attorney General. And then I was coming to Colby that same fall. But then she lost her primary on September 13th, 2018. I remember the date because on September 14th, I registered to vote in Maine and got involved right away. And I was knocking doors on September 15th. So that's how I got started in Maine politics. And just from then on out, I've been really involved. And then, of course, with the Colby Democrats, which I now help run. And then in the spring of my first year, 150 Colby affiliated ballots, including faculty members who live on campus here. We were all challenged by a couple residents, and that challenge went up to the Maine Supreme Court and was then thrown out, but then brought back again through the Voter Registration Appeals Board here in Waterville. So then I testified on behalf of my peers to assert our right to vote. And of course we won that because we unequivocally have the right to register to vote and vote here in Waterville as residents. And then I proceeded to run for office the following fall for the Charter Commission, which I never thought was going to be the plan, but because of my role in Democrats and helping Democrats in this city, 2 days before the filing deadline to be on the ballot, our candidate had decided that she wasn't running anymore. So then we needed someone to fill the spot, and I had a couple hours to decided I would do it, and spent the next afternoon getting signatures, and here I am. I've learned a lot, I've grown a lot after a year of being in real politics and not third grade or fifth grade class politics in my first elected office. And I just work really hard to make sure that other Colby students and students around the state and country know that they have the right to vote and feel supported and safe in casting their votes, especially right now. So I too am a poll worker, and I'm excited for that. And I also do all my partisan work with Maine College Democrats and College Democrats of America to make sure that we are an inclusive organization and that we are advocating for the issues and candidates that share our values. But that was just kind of a long thing about my life in politics.
I think I'm up next. I got my start in politics early. I have a very politically engaged family. I probably hosted my first real protest in 2012. I was in high school, and it was when everyone was knitting uteruses to send to politicians who didn't believe in reproductive rights, which talk about marrying my passion for crafts with politics. It was kind of a dream come true. I held a knitting circle. It was great. But I never saw it as a career. If you'd asked me then, I would have said that I would probably be a paleontologist or a geologist, work with rocks and bones. And so I went to college. I got a degree in environmental science. And through the process of getting that degree, I just got more and more annoyed that scientists weren't getting listened to. And I got more and more aware that not everywhere had the access to natural resources like clean air and water or our beautiful coastline that we do here in Maine. And I quickly transitioned into a degree in political science as well, and came back home to Maine to organize voters and make sure that young people make their voices heard to make a difference in climate change.
Is it my turn to go? I hope everyone can hear me better this time. So I'm still in high school, but I kind of got my start in politics during the 2016 election. When I was in 8th grade, it was a very big topic of conversation for everyone. We had a mock election throughout my whole school. They had everyone do ballads and choose someone to vote for. It was very fun. It was like 6th grade through 8th grade, and then we had a big reveal, and my middle school actually does polling locations, so it's always something. I've been around politics. My mom, she's a social studies teacher, so it's something we talk about quite a lot. I've always been involved in school politics since middle school.
Liz, Vivian?
actually being that young, and it kind of spurred me into doing more things while I was in high school, and I've slowly begun to do more things, starting with like freshman year. I was like class president, and I joined the civil rights team. We actually started a civil rights team at our school, which was great. We've continued to build off of that civil rights team. And I've been doing more work now with the League of Women Voters that actually started in spring. It was actually one of the first time, I come from like a smaller town. My school filters in a few different towns in New Hampshire, so we don't really usually get a lot of opportunities to work with, voter organizations. We get a lot of information, especially as a high school student, about voting, and we're really trying to change that at my school. I'm trying to get teachers involved. I'm actually doing a fellowship with Maine Students Vote right now to try to incorporate voter education into the high school system, to try to educate people, even starting as like freshmen, because if you have the information, you're more likely to vote when you're older, that you have the tools to do so. And like I said, I'm on the steering committee of the youth council and the steering committee of youth work makes booth work, and I'm going to be a poll worker. I'm really trying to set an example for other students, to get other students involved and kind of build that community and foundation within my town and my district. And that is kind of my political activism journey, if you will, to this point.
Thank you all so much for giving those wonderful intros about how you got into activism. I'm going to start directing specific questions. So Anna, what are some obstacles or barriers that you've faced during your long career, and what have you run up against?
I think the first obstacle that I really faced was when I graduated from college, and I had kind of gone through, somebody who enjoyed school and enjoyed all of the subjects that I was studying, and then I realized when I graduated that I didn't have any skills, or at least at first it seemed like I didn't have any skills beyond being a student. And so I thought, okay, well, that means that I should go work for a think tank, or keep going and get a master's, or to keep doing school, because that's what I know that I'm good at. And it took a series of risks. And at first it took not getting a job. I really wanted a DC based or internationally based, doing international development work, post-conflict resolution. I was like so ready for all of that. I was applying for the State Department. I was doing all of these things that seemed like they were ready to launch me into the next bit of my life. And I kept making the final round and not getting anything. And it was really, really hard to realize that, oh, wait, like, I feel like I have a lot to give, but here I am, like, sitting around and applying for things, but not doing anything else. And I actually got to do an internship that seemed way less prestigious and cool and exciting at first, which was to work for Catholic Charities doing refugee resettlement. And I was driving people to appointments and filling out paperwork in, the many, many duplicate pieces of paperwork that needed to be filled out for people's applications for different things. And it seemed, nowhere near, what I'd studied for, but I suddenly realized that I was being able to make a concrete difference for other people's lives. And it was also really, really humbling, because I realized that so much of the information that people actually needed about how do you live in America and what do I do? I didn't know because I'd grown up with a lot of relative privilege, and I didn't actually know what, it took to apply for general assistance. I didn't know what how to navigate getting a doctor if you didn't already have a family doctor. All of these things that I hadn't learned yet, I got to see from that perspective. And so I was, it gave me a new lens, not just on sort of how people, the aftermath and what people were dealing with coming from some of the conflicts that I'd studied, but also really a window on the inequalities within like the place where I'd grown up. So living back at home and doing that unpaid internship while working in a coffee shop was by far, I think, more educational for me than working at a big think tank would have been. And similarly, I got started in the work that I do now. I was hired as an organizer, which is being an organizer, and I know a lot of you are, it's kind of like doing a job in sales. It's not very glamorous a lot of the time. You're just trying to get people to do things while trying to pretend that you're not just trying to get them to do things, and you want to be their friend, and you are, but also you want them to do things because it really would be better for the world. And I thought I was terrible with dealing with people because I had always liked books better. So I had to learn how to get over a lot of that. And so with all of those things, by pushing myself out of my comfort zone and doing things that didn't seem like they were as glamorous or it looked as great on my resume, I actually learned the skills and not just sort of the content and the subject matter of the things that I was interested in. So those things that at the time, like when I was 22, 23, 24, felt like my life was going completely off the rails, were actually some of what has let me go on to do work that I really love and is really fulfilling.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I feel like what you just said about taking risks and the less glamorousness of organizing perfectly dovetails into my next question, which is for Marina, which is what advice would you give for people that are wanting to be more civically engaged, or people that are already working as activists that want to become more involved with the community? What advice would you give to those people?
For people just wanting to get started, it's going to sound silly, but get started. The hardest part of starting to volunteer is that first time you show up, and taking the time to find a few organizations that you think might be a good fit, might be relevant to your interests, and maybe volunteering like one shift at each to see where is a good fit, and then just going and showing up. It's so much easier to show up the second time. That first one is a little challenging, and it's a little scary, especially starting as an organizer, talking on the phone and stuff like that. It's daunting, but the second time is really easy. For folks hoping to get more engaged, I would probably give the same advice. Just keep showing up. Going from being a regular volunteer to a paid organizer or intern isn't a huge jump. My first fellow who I hired was just because she was volunteering a few hours a week less than the interns were expected to. And I really felt like she needed to get paid for that. And that happens all the time. So the more you show up, the more opportunities open up themselves up, and the easier it gets and the better you get at it. So the more opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, thank you so much for that answer. I know exactly how that feels because I also work as a fellow with someone who's on this call right now, Katie Dodge. She's an excellent organizer. And my next question is for Lutie, and it is, have you ever had a roundtable discussion with people who don't necessarily agree with you, or not necessarily a roundtable discussion, but any discussion with people who don't necessarily agree with you? And have you found yourself listening to others who don't agree with you and finding a way to communicate with them? And how do you find a common ground in your work?
That's a great question. Yes, I have found myself in that situation. I had found myself in that situation many times before, and I learned a lot from dealing with that regularly as a charter commission member after being elected. So once I walked in the door in January when I was actually, I don't know what it's in office. I don't know. Because I was elected in November, but I started in January. One of the other members of Charter Commission was actually one of the people who sued us for voting the year prior. So she didn't think that I had any right to vote to begin with, let alone be across the table from her, helping make these decisions for the city of Waterville in our governing document. And a couple of other people were also along the same veins. They agreed with her. And really they weren't in the majority, but there were 10 of us total, and there were at least 4 of them. There were a couple swings, and then I had a couple allies, and that's always huge going in. So kind of on the same note of like showing up, the more you show up, people will notice that you're showing up, and they will respect you, and they want to join you, and you will inspire them, and they will inspire you. So because I was so vocal in the spring and throughout my campaign and after I was elected, people who I was going to work with had actually already developed some level of respect for me. So I was able to have allies going in. So that's always important. Make sure you have a team. And if you don't have one, build one. And I did work really hard on learning I just learned the tough parts of politics. So I came in kind of like ready to go, ready to fight. And my first motion was to abolish the mayor's position in the city of Waterville. If you know anything about Waterville, the mayor hasn't always been a really important position. And right now it's a little toxic. So I came in guns blazing, ready to go. That was my first motion. I was like, I'm in office, I can make it happen. Now that was quickly voted down. And then my backup, like back pocket thing was I was going to have term limits for the mayor, which was, I think I had one more vote on that, but it was also didn't pass. But then I realized that then I got more and more used to the fact that some of the things that I was proposing were getting shot down, but then other more compromise packages did seem to start passing. And then in June, maybe, after we've been working together for about 6 months, the idea of term limits for the city council had passed. And that's when I realized, oof, if I had actually held on to my mayoral term limits motion 6 months earlier and tried to propose this now, it would probably pass. It definitely would actually, because we would tie it along with city council term limits. And that would happen. And maybe I could bring even forward the idea of abolishing the mayor's position then. But long story short, I learned the game of politics that I probably shouldn't have come in January 5th or whatnot and said that we should abolish the mayor's position. And I should have instead proposed a clerical change, which is really what most of the Charter Commission has proposed. If you have looked at it, I still recommend voting yes on it. But I just have learned that a team is really important, number one. So I've had a really great team from day one, and I really appreciated all of them. Then that team kind of grew throughout my entire time in office. So before charter meetings, we would have the agenda, and I would actually reach out to different Charter Commission members, even the ones who I didn't always agree with, to see if we can kind of come to a resolution and come to a compromise before we voted the following Tuesday. So I'd work on that. Didn't always work out. Sometimes it did. I'm glad it did. And so then my team just gradually grew more and more. And I actually have some of my closest friends now as fellow Charter Commission members. And then my second piece of advice is just kind of like be strategic about your punches. Make sure you have your team behind you when you do make them, and but don't lose hope. So I understand that like that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, but I've now learned and I know the game of politics, and I know that maybe I should do this going forward. And I'm giving this advice to people like all of you. But just like don't lose hope, have a team, and just even though it seems like people might not listen to you, they will. And I did manage to get Kathy to respect me. I didn't mean to name her on this call, I'm sorry. I did manage to get the other member who sued us to respect me by the end of Charter Commission. We are not friends, but she did start to understand that I did have a point, and I was here for a reason. And I do care just as much about the city of Waterville as she does. So people will come around and recognize, hopefully, will recognize your humanity and listen. But really just my main thing is build a team. They have your back.
Yeah, thank you so much for that super thoughtful and in-depth answer. And the part about community dovetails with another question that I have for Anna, actually, which is who has helped you and encouraged you along the way? And what is the importance of coalition and community in your work?
Those are really great questions. So I guess I just would second so much of what Lutie said, that I have I've learned a lot from people who I've been doing the same work with, my fellow organizers, the staff that I work with, some of the volunteers, and I'm lucky with the League of Women Voters that we work with people, really people of all ages who have been doing activism for a long time and people who are just getting started. So I think, and we have people in all age categories who fall into both, but I got to start working on the Clean Elections Initiative with people who had been advocating for clean elections for 20 years and had a huge depth that they were willing to share with me in terms of their knowledge and experience. I also have learned so much from people who were doing organizing that was much more direct and radical than the kind of organizing that I was trained to do within sort of the nonprofit and campaign sphere. I really appreciate the friends that I have who focus on direct action and community mutual aid and have, participated in Occupy and learn their skills that way, and folks who have been involved in Black Lives Matter and who are looking beyond just electoral reform and sort of what we can do through the system as it is, to how do we change the system, how do we change the culture, how do we change the way we think about things. And so while I tend to be a more work within the system person, I really feel like we have so much to learn from each other, and often we end up getting into arguments about method in a way that most change has come from people working both inside and outside of the system. And so I really I value the people who have pushed me and told me what I was doing was wrong, and the people who have taken the time to tell me and teach me about their work. And when they say, okay, and now we need to figure out how, when we show up to a city council meeting, we don't get, we actually get our 3 minutes of time, and I can help them, figure out the system too.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to shift the conversation to Fiona and talk a little bit about burnout. Burnout and activist fatigue are some of the most common things that activists experience and people that work in politics experience. And so what are some of the ways that you balance your activism work to practice self-care and combating burnout?
Honestly, I still struggle with this like right now, but I have developed a couple different methods to kind of keep myself on track. Yeah, it is definitely mood. It's like right now, with everything that's going on in the world, with school and everything outside, it is difficult not to get overwhelmed, but just bringing in certain pieces to your schedule. Like, I do this thing before I go to bed. I make sure I journal, and I just like write down all my thoughts and just take some time to reflect on my day and take care of myself. And I also do this thing, it's like face steaming. It gets you really relaxed and just listen to some music. But I think finding methods and time to do things where you don't have to commit your whole self to is really helpful, because I know when I'm doing this work, it's difficult not to be absolutely engaged, like with like your heart and soul. So if something bad happens, like you feel it. But also if something good happens, you have some good energy. But I feel like more than usual right now, there's a lot of negatives. So definitely self-care, and just kind of giving yourself time to space out and like do arts and crafts and like all of that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And with I think it's 14 days now until the election. I think all activists are working hard now. everyone's got a lot of irons in the fire. So it's good that everyone's working on, or everyone should be working on, taking care of themselves, but also working very hard, because that's important. So I actually have another question for you, Fiona. So what makes you hopeful about the future of youth activism?
Honestly, this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but one piece that keeps me hopeful is definitely social media and TikTok, and just like seeing that there is a lot of people who are out there doing similar work, because I feel like especially in Maine, it can feel quite isolating, and it can feel like, how are you ever gonna create change in this group of people that has so often voted a certain way or done something a certain way. So seeing that kind of like our generation, like Gen Z, is like really like doing some amazing things is really helpful to me, to first know that change is possible, and also that there's a lot of people out there doing the same thing. And I think that about sums it up. Could you restate the question one more time? Just
Yes. The question is, what makes you hopeful about the future of youth activism?
Oh yeah. So yeah, and working with people in my school, definitely. Like this year I haven't been able to really meet with many people, but there's like this solid group of girls who like, we just did so much last year, making sure, facilitating conversations with people in our school, trying to do some policy work, trying to get some things changed, and just doing a lot of that and working with them. Honestly, like Lutie said, having a team makes everything so much better, and it really like, it empowers you. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand. And part of Hardy Girls, Healthy Women is having a team. That's what the Girls Advisory Board is about. And that's what things like this are about, because I feel like I could be a team with all of you. And I feel like all activists can be a team with each other. But having that support is so important, and Gen Z's super in tune to that. And so my next question is for Vivian, and I'm wondering, who inspires you as an activist?
Well, honestly, it's really true for me, especially well, my mother is one of the first people who really inspired me to be an activist. She taught me so much about politics as a young woman, and really opened up the discussions for me. The people that I work with, you know, in the League of Women Voters, you know, my fellowship supervisor, all the other people, the youth council and the steering committee council. I think the people who inspire me the most are the people that I work with, the people who I work under in some cases, who are really driving the efforts. I think inspire me to do more and to be like them. Certainly people like AOC and other politicians who are really making a change, I think inspires me to do more. A lot of the things that I look at night to kind of keep that inspiration going are like posts titled things like things that restore your faith in humanity, and they're just about like people making a difference in the communities. A lot of things that I look at are geared towards recently it's been like about environmental activism, or the Black Lives Matter movement, or youth voter activism is primarily what I'm involved in, but just in general, voter activism. I'm in a sister school program with a school in Arkansas, about the types of voter suppression they're under and what they're doing, and how we can kind of teach each other through our experiences, and how we can kind of like change our outlook and how we approach things, and not be so like single-minded or just focused on us and what's going on here, but maybe look in a national perspective. You know, I really admire that quality in other people and the people that I work with. So those are the people who inspire me the most, especially now, and especially during the pandemic, and how hard it's been, you know, continuing to do work that we're trying to do, I think is one of the most admirable things that has kept me going, because of how hard 2020 has been for the world. And
Yes, thank you so much for that answer. And I have one more question before we move to audience questions, and that's for Marina. And I'm wondering, how do you combat cynicism about the electoral process and attempt to re-engage folks who are distrustful of that process, especially young people who are like first-time or early voters?
Yeah, I find one of the best ways to do that is highlighting the young people who are getting elected and who are engaged. There are a few young women in particular in Maine who've been elected to local or state level offices at really impressively young ages. And they both inspire me and provide great role models and examples of that you can get a lot done. And like just the amount that we've achieved working towards climate goals and stuff like that in Maine, because we have so many young people engaged, it's easy to highlight why it's so important and that it's working.
Yes, thank you so much. And that is the end of my questions. And I know that I could probably ask you guys questions and talk to you guys about all the stuff that I'm interested in forever, but I want the audience to get a chance to ask questions. So I'll give the audience a few seconds to think and then drop questions in the chat. And then I think I'll let the panelists jump in and decide if they would like to answer any specific questions. But I'll just give it a minute for people to write them down.
I know John had written one that said, what plans do people have for support and activism for the weeks following the election to remain strong?
I guess I can answer that really quickly. The answer that I have is I don't really have one, but I've been thinking about it and I'm trying to find one. I know in all my Maine College Dems work and with my nonpartisan voter work across the state and the country, we're trying, and even within the College Dems of America, we're trying to make sure that there's some sort of something out there that's self-care for activists. And I think everyone on this call will have great tips to add to that. And I really appreciated Fiona's. So we're just making sure that people take care of themselves after this election, because honestly, whichever way it goes, we're going to be exhausted and we'll be happy for a hot sec, but there also are some things that we need to change, even if it goes as we want. So we need to, we need to take a break. We need to rest, recover, and then make sure that we still have that same level of energy and hope going forward. So I think that self-care is really important. And I'm happy to collaborate with anyone where you can send me ideas or whatnot, but self-care for activists is my main focus after November 3rd / on November 3rd.
I need everyone to send me their self-care tips, because we made the what seemed like a brilliant decision at the time choice to schedule a forum for candidates for the Secretary of State. We're going to have a new Secretary of State this year, and the legislature elects that candidate, but we want them to be doing it on an with some education about the candidates and a chance for their constituents to listen and pressure them for who to vote for. So we're hosting a forum the week after the election. So this always happens because there's such a short amount of time between the election and the start of the new legislative session, and potentially we'll be doing work at the federal level this year as well. There's a big opportunity potentially for reform on for the whole country, not just for Maine. So it's both my favorite time of year because we have so much new information and we can make so many plans before we actually get into the less fun part of trying to make those plans into a reality. And also, I will need to sleep and somebody will need to tell me to just stop looking at spreadsheets of new legislators and go to sleep.
I totally agree with Anna. I'm gonna need all of your guys' numbers so that we can swap some self-care ideas. But I have like one small thing that I'm going to be doing. So with my work at the ACLU, one thing I've been working on is developing the voter protections hotline, which you all may have heard about. It started up on Monday. And we still have slots to volunteer if you guys are willing. But I'm going to be volunteering in about like 5 days after the election. So the voter hotline will continue after the election, just in case there's some shady stuff going on. But just one way to kind of keep peace of mind and feel like I'm doing something else is just to be a part of that. But yeah.
The other big self-care thing that we're going to be doing after the election is professional development. A really scary part of campaign season ending is a lot of people's jobs also end and they have to figure out next steps. So that's going to be a lot of our November, is helping everyone transition into new exciting positions and growing and all of that fun stuff.
I know for me, on the high school level, if we're talking about self-care, certainly my goal during my fellowship is to kind of increase the education about voting for high school students. And I think one of my goals is to increase the education and information before the election, but also kind of doing a recap after the election and providing some information. Additionally, other things you can do, because activism work doesn't just end after the presidential election. I know it's like the big lead up, but a lot of the things that might keep people going is knowing that there's always going to be another election. Local elections are important. Kind of keeping that attitude continuous and that information still disseminating even after the election, no matter the outcome, kind of keeping that hope, that interest, that excitement, because if you inform the younger generation, it will create a better population of informed and excited next generation of voters, which is what we're really looking for. So to not lose that hope, to not lose that drive, to keep that excitement and that spirit going, I think is really important at the high school level, to not just stop that information dissemination before and after the election. Just keep going and really incorporate it into curriculum. And what we're looking at my school is to incorporate in the social studies curriculum. So I know that's not really self-care, but it's definitely steps you can take to kind of, maybe depending on the outcome and depending who you are, maybe ease the blow.
Yeah, thank you all for your answers. I know that self-care is going to be super important after the election for anyone that's working in activism. So just everyone just keep plugging along, I guess. And I think I have one more question that I found in here, and it might be missing from me now. Here it is. How do the panelists navigate the balance between stepping up to make sure their voices are heard specifically and lifting and amplifying the voices of others?
I can start on that one. My favorite strategy is bringing friends into the room. Just like the best way to get more voices heard is to bring more people to the table, and just maximizing the number of people involved in the conversation. And so if you always bring a friend, then there's always one more voice, one more perspective. So just quantity.
I love that we all were hesitating to answer this question because it is such a perfect example of when we're all trying to be very considerate of each other and let the others go first, which is lovely. And I've tried to think about, when is my voice adding something that wouldn't be being said otherwise, versus when am I, going to say the blander, less direct version that what someone else could say more powerfully and meaningfully in the room. And so I know that often what I have that other folks don't have, sometimes it's my experience as a non-binary person. So that's something that I try to be aware of. And I don't always want to speak up, and not always what I want to talk about, but it is something that I can bring. And I know a lot about election law and the, obscure details of it, which no one should really have to know in order to get involved, but that's something that I can bring. And there's a lot of other things that other people can speak on much more powerfully and directly. So I think it's learning through a lot of trial and error of what is your unique skill set or experience that you're bringing into a space.
For me, personally, at my school, at my high school level, I'm trying to act as the bridge to all this information, because previously it hasn't been talked about at our schools. Opportunities were afforded to students the way they've started to be now. So by uplifting, the youth council and the women voters has really uplifted my voice, and by doing that, it has enabled me to kind of uplift the voices of the students at my school who have the same viewpoint or interests as me, by speaking to the whole school, to clubs, to kind of filtering people into this line of work. I've been talking with so many town clerks for so many reasons, so I kind of have the experience of registering to vote, of knowing how clerks will react by communicating with town clerks, not just in my town, but also in adjacent towns. Kind of gives me the knowledge to support my peers in lifting their own voices and trying to become part of the efforts and become speakers themselves. Sorry about my video. Being a part of this speakers bureau, actually, I've learned how to talk to large groups of people better, how to introduce myself, how to really encourage people to get involved in the cause. And, you know, by doing that, I think part of your job as a person who has been afforded the opportunity to speak, to encourage other people to have that same opportunity, to engage in that opportunity, to seek out, really, you know, by being that example, by being the representative of your peers, who is someone who's doing that. I think it's really important that you do that for them and for yourself and for your organization, to get other people involved and to empower other people with your own experiences.
Fiona, do you want to add anything to this question?
Sure. Oh, my setup just fell down. I think basically what Vivian said and Anna, and yeah, I think you guys had great assessments of how to amplify other people's voices. But I think this was something I at first struggled with, was not just thinking that my ideas and thoughts were the best. Definitely when I was younger, I had to really, like, when I learned how to listen to people and hear their ideas, like truly listen to people, I don't think it's not a superiority complex, but in that sense, it did make my superiority complex go down a little bit, and also realize that it's not just my voice that matters, that there's all these other people who are either sharing my experiences or also having different experiences that matter and that need to be heard. So having that experience, which I think happened around freshman year, has caused me to do the same thing that I think it was either Anna or Marina said, just bring a friend. So I try to always invite a bunch of people if there's an opportunity that I know about, if there's anything that I think they would be interested in, and trying to just amplify that opportunity throughout the school, especially in the POC community. But yeah.
Yeah, so we are over time now, so I'm gonna try to wrap everything up, but I just want to first of all say, before I get into wrapping up, like, thank you to all of the panelists. You guys are so incredibly inspiring, and it's amazing that Gen Z and millennial people are so incredibly civically engaged, and it makes me hopeful, and I think it makes everyone here hopeful. So with that being said, a big goal of these Ruckus Roundtables is to bring our knowledge to action, and we want to leave all of you with some steps to take to get involved. And we've asked each of our panelists to include some resources, and those were sent to you in email today, and we'll follow up again tomorrow. And don't forget that there's a spectrum of action you can take, from realizing your voice and power and taking it to the streets and everything in between. Don't let fear paralyze you, and there's a lane for everyone, and we're excited for you to find yours. Thanks for joining us tonight for our first Ruckus Roundtable. The next one is going to be November 17th from 7 to 8 p.m. There will be a pre-screening for a documentary, and the weekend before, and talking about sexual harassment with a panel. And we hope you can join us for that one too. And text Roundtable to the number on the screen to remain updated. And we appreciate donations that help us keep our programming free and low cost. And thank you again to our panelists and to Kelly and Shannon for all of their hard work on this event. And thanks for Hardy Girls Healthy Women for being incredible. And thank you to all of you for coming.
Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's lovely to have this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. It was awesome. Thank you. I love the energy.